A serial rapist coming together with a hybristophiliac, a woman who loved him for his vicious crimes, essentially making a power couple of serial rapists and serial murderers who had no bounds on who their victims could be, not even one of the pair's 15-year-old little sister. The Barbie and Ken Killers. Hey, it's Genevia and welcome to Mystery Digest, where every Sunday I cover true crime cases, paranormal cases, and other mystery-related content. If you're new here, hello, thank you for coming. I hope you feel welcomed. And if you are a returning resident, thank you for tuning in again. Mwah. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. This Sunday we're talking about another couple that committed unspeakable crimes, but of course, I'm gonna speak about them. The Barbie and Ken Killers. Given that name apparently because of their attractive appearances. Okay. Actual names, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. A couple that bonded over the sexual assault and murders of young girls, including Karla's own little sister. We'll be looking into Paul's early life, his crimes as a Scarborough rapist, Karla's life before she met Paul, the crimes they committed together, and the results of their trial. Paul was born August 27, 1964, to a comfortable middle-class family. And for most of his childhood, he was raised to believe that Kenneth Bernardo was his father. However, when Paul was a teenager, his mother told him that shortly after she married Kenneth, she had an affair with an old boyfriend, and that's how he was conceived. He did not take it well. He spent the rest of his time with his parents, calling his mother a whore, a slut, and a slob. And in turn, she called him a bastard. Kenneth was aware of his wife's affair and Paul's illegitimacy. However, he still agreed to put his name on Paul's birth certificate and raise him as his own. But before y'all go on and praise this man, hold on to that. This man is not who you think he is. Kenneth was charged with child molestation and repeatedly sexually abused Paul's sister. He was also known to be the peeping Tom of the neighborhood. He was also abusive. His wife became depressed because of his behavior and withdrew from the family, spending her days in the basement of their home. Bernardo soon developed dark sexual fantasies and became overly controlling and possessive of the women in his life. He enjoyed humiliating women in public and brutally beating them. Before meeting Karla, he was already a serial rapist, having assaulted at least 19 girls, all between the ages of 15 and 21, most of them being minors. These attacks would also include beatings, intense verbal abuse, and threats to discourage the girls from reporting. Most of these girls would be abducted from their bus stops late at night, but at least one girl, a 15-year-old, was attacked in her own bedroom. Because he carried out these acts in and around Scarborough, Ontario, he was named the Scarborough Rapist, and he was almost caught. That's the funny bit. He was called in for questioning. He was a suspect. They questioned him for 36 minutes, and he was being super cooperative, even gave his DNA samples. But because of a delay in the testing, he walked away free. Karla Homolka was born to Dorothy and Carol Homolka in Ontario, 1970, and was the eldest of 3 siblings. She was described as pretty, well-adjusted, smart, and popular. She had a fondness for animals and started working at a veterinary clinic after high school. And despite having nothing in her childhood indicating that she would have done what she did, she ended up becoming one of the most notorious female predators. The two met at a Scarborough restaurant in 1987. At the time, Karla was 17 and Paul was 23. They clicked immediately. Unlike other women that Paul knew, Karla encouraged his sadistic behavior and violent fantasies towards women. Her obsession with dangerous men, especially ones who commit violent crimes, along with her willingness to be his slave, would come as a shock to a lot of people. Not only because of her pristine reputation, but because of how she pretended that their relationship was perfect. But the truth was, 3 years into their relationship, even though they just got engaged, Paul was getting bored. He would often complain about the fact that she wasn't a virgin when they met, which is weird, sir, mad weird. And he soon turned his attention elsewhere, developing an obsession with her 15-year-old little sister. He would even sneak into her room at night and touch himself to her. And you know what Karla did instead of putting her foot down and protecting her sister? She encouraged and supported his behavior and promised her little sister's virginity as a Christmas present to Paul. I wish to fight. On December 23, 1990, while at a Christmas party at the Homolka home, Karla spiked her own sister's drink with animal anesthetics she stole from work. And that night, while the rest of the family was sleeping, her little sister Tammy was unconscious. Karla held a halothane-soaked cloth over her nose and mouth and took turns sexually assaulting her with her fiancé. And they recorded the brutal incident. During the incident, Tammy began choking up vomit. The couple panicked and tried to cover up evidence before calling an ambulance. She never woke up and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Although there was a chemical burn on her face, probably from the halothane, her death was ruled an accident as a result of choking on vomit from alcohol poisoning. The gravity of Karla's little sister's death did nothing to quench their thirst for blood. If anything, it made it stronger. In 1991, Karla lured another teenager to the home she shared with Paul. This time, it was a girl she befriended from work. The couple drugged her, abused her, and recorded it. Luckily, she survived but had no memory of the incidents that occurred. Paul kidnapped a 14-year-old girl named Leslie Mahaffey. It was the early hours of June 15, 1991, and the victim had just returned from the wake of a friend. It was around 2 a.m. in the morning, and she didn't have the keys to her home, and unfortunately, Paul was in the neighborhood. He forced her into his vehicle at knife point and took her back to the home he shared with his fiancée. Reportedly, he and Karla took turns sexually assaulting her, and 2 days later dismembering her body with a circular saw and hid the body in a lake, but just before covering it in concrete. A disturbing fact is that the day between committing the crimes and dismembering her body was Father's Day, and they had family visit them. So they had family upstairs while her body was downstairs. The marriage surprise. While Karla and Paul were getting married on June 29, 1991, enjoying an elaborate wedding, which included their entrance on a white horse-drawn carriage, a couple that was canoeing in Lake Gibson nearby discovered concrete blocks containing human body parts in the water. The remains belonged to 14-year-old Leslie. Almost a year later, on April 16, 1992, the couple grabbed another victim. This time 15-year-old KRISTEN FENCH. KRISTEN was their final victim. She was kidnapped in a parking lot after being approached by Karla pretending to be a tourist asking for directions. Paul approached her from behind and forced her into their car. But by this point in their operation, Karla and Paul were becoming brazen with their activities. They kidnapped her in broad daylight, and she did put up a fight. The abduction was witnessed by several people. Unfortunately, the witnesses weren't able to identify the vehicle. The police soon realized that multiple of these murders were connected. In January 1993, Paul and Karla were having an argument. Paul lashed out at Karla and brutally beat her with a flashlight, leaving her with a shattered eye socket and multiple broken ribs. Karla left him 2 months later. Karla was called into the police station to what she thought was going to be questioning related to her domestic violence situation. Instead, they were asking her about Paul. Feeling under pressure, she told the police and her family about everything that was happening, but trying to paint herself in the light of a victim. The government, believing this narrative, gave her a 12-year sentence in exchange for her cooperation in putting Paul behind bars. But this quickly backfired when during the trial, the recordings came to light. You know, the recordings they took while they were abusing multiple victims? Yeah, those ones. Everyone saw that Karla was not the battered victim she was claiming to be, but rather a cruel sadist just like Paul. But despite this, she ended up just spending 12 years in prison. You know, the time that was originally given to her before the videotapes came out. And she was released in 2005. She got remarried, she had kids, and she's still alive now, living her life somewhere. Paul was found guilty of all charges against him, which was just 2 rapes and murders of teenage girls. He's now serving life behind bars. 12 years! She spent 12 years behind bars. I am disgusted. How the justice system allowed that to slip is beyond me. So what do you guys think about this case and Karla and Paul, what they did? Paul obviously committed more crimes than Karla did. But the space in between the amount of years Paul is spending behind bars versus Karla, how many years do you think they should have gotten? Do you think Karla should have been able to, go about her life, have kids, get married, and do all those things their victims couldn't do? Tell me in the comments below. Here endeth a portion of my unholy word. We end it by saying, don't murder people. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already.